And I am done. Okay, so I just finished up reading In the Shadow of Lightning by Brian McClellan. This is the first in a new epic urban fantasy called The Glass Immortals, and I wanted to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing the book, which was just now. So I really like this book. It's a 4 out of 5 for me. It certainly had its faults, but thoroughly I enjoyed it. I enjoyed so much of it. And we'll get into the specifics about what I liked and didn't like, but essentially, while it was good and every part of the book was good, it was just good. Nothing really blew me away. No part of this book really blew me away. And that's a little unfortunate to me because Brian McClellan wrote 2 trilogies before this. He wrote the trilogy that I thoroughly love and I've talked a lot about on my channel, the Powder Mage. And it's such a good flintlock epic fantasy that evokes so many of the good things that made the first law as good as it really is. And I really wanted this book to be more like that book. He then wrote a second trilogy, which was Gods of Blood and Powder. And that was set in the same universe on a different continent. And I thought that was good, not great. And so I really wanted this book to be more like the first trilogy, but unfortunately in so many ways, it was a lot more like the second trilogy for me. And part of what made it more like the second trilogy was, at heart, what this book was a mystery. It's like a fantasy mystery story. And while I do enjoy mysteries, I like a good detective novel, it's not my favorite thing in the world. And what I wanted was that grand epic scope that brought in these huge powers for these enormous set pieces, and we got a little of that, but not enough. So let me go through the various things that I like to go through to judge whether a book's good or not, and let me give my scores on the specifics of this book. So let's start with the story. And the story itself, I'm gonna give a 4 out of 5. You know, I did think the story was engaging from start to finish, but it started out a lot better than it finished for me. I thought that the beginning of this book was so intriguing. I thought, man, this is it. This is going to be an easy 5 out of 5 for me. The world just got so built so quickly. The story got really fleshed out, but then it just kind of hit a flat line. And these big events did happen, but it just didn't feel huge. The basic story here, and I never like to ruin anything on this channel, but I'll tell you a few basics that you'll get within the first few chapters. This is a world that's dependent on magical substances, glass, that gives people these magic powers, but the magic is running out. They're running out of being able to harvest more of this, and the entire economy and the entire world as they know it is about to crumble. And not a lot of people know this. And so the ones that do are desperately trying to fix this scenario and figure out what to do about the problem, whether they can get more power into they use up the power from this glass, how to get power imbued back into it. So that's one angle of it. The other is there's a political assassination by a major character, a relative of a major character. And a lot of this book is trying to figure out who committed the assassination and why. And the last thing that this book is about is a war between these 2 neighboring cities. Or like one empire in a neighboring city, but a mercenary company gets involved and this war is engaging while these other major things are going on. And there's heavy political intrigue. I love a good politically intriguing book. And this book certainly had a lot of that. But at the end, nothing was really groundbreaking here. I thought it was consistently fun to read about, but didn't blow me away. So let's now move into the world building. And I thought, again, the world building was like a 4 out of 5. It never reached those peaks. You know, the world was fleshed out. And I thought early on, I really enjoyed how quickly the world just kind of came at you fast and heavy. These different locations were talked about, and you really got a good feel for what's going on here. You know, I thought that the pacing of getting this world on board and getting you to understand it was very good. You know, I thought that the author did a surprisingly good job at drawing this picture. You know, I struggle sometimes with seeing exactly what the author wants me to see. I kind of see things a little ambiguously, and I often go by plot, not so much like the images of these characters and the places being stuck in my head, but that certainly was there. You know, in my head, I can see this city, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it smells like, and what these characters are. But again, just didn't blow me away on this aspect. Let's go to the fantasy elements. And the fantasy elements, again, I'm going to say, not to keep on copying myself here, but this is like a 4 out of 5. It was cool, but not unique. It felt so much like the first era of Mistborn, where you've got this glass, and it gives these people temporary powers if they attach it to themselves that goes away over time. Think of the metals in Mistborn. It makes them run faster or be able to cure themselves faster, or, you put something on somebody and it will make them have to tell the truth. And so I love Mistborn's magic system. I thought it was extremely unique and fun to read about. And this one was too similar, but not as good. I mean, you got Mistborn, where these characters have very unique aspects that this metal can make them do. Being able to shoot out metal at somebody and being able to pull it back at you, and both of those being different powers. These really fun different plays on things that you've probably never heard about before, but being stronger, being able to heal faster, this is basic stuff. And so it did play into the story rather well, though. I thought it wasn't overused. It came in at important moments and didn't feel like it was the crux of the story, but it added to it in a nice way. Just not unique enough for me. On the other side of the fantasy elements, there was these kind of, and I don't want to ruin much, so I'll be very slight in what I say, but these kind of like mythical type of beasts start to emerge at the later part of the book, and I won't say anything more than that because I want you to be surprised if you read this, which I encourage you to do. And it adds like this horror element to the book, which was unexpected and it felt kind of jarring when it happened, but I actually did enjoy it. I thought it was fun, and it started to feel actually really unique, because I don't read a lot of fantasy books that kind of surprise you with the horror elements. I thought actually The Wandering Inn, which I reviewed like a month or two ago, did have that as well. And I was like, man, this is really fun. I don't like a horror book, but to throw in some of these horror elements I thought was kind of cool. The characters. This is where things start to decline a little bit. And I'll probably say like a 3.5 out of 5 for the characters. They're just bland. I did connect with them. I liked several of them. One of them is this super tough brute type of guy that's got these emotional depths to him, that his name's like Baby, and he's anything but. He's like a monster of a man, and this champion like ex-prize fighter. And he's my favorite character by far, and I bet you most people that read this book are going to feel the same way. But the main character is just the classic, super smart, gets by on his wits, better than everybody at everything. He did go through a major tragedy in the first chapter of the book that I thought was extremely compelling, but very quickly he just kind of gets over it and goes back to his normal life, and he gets by on his wits, and it's like, okay, I've read this a million times, so it didn't feel super ingenious by any means. But I also felt like the characters were too black and white. I don't need gray everywhere. I don't need every book to be A Song of Ice and Fire or Malazan, but a little bit would be nice. I mean, it's very clear who the good guys and the bad guys are, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm going to read the second book and it's going to be like, oh, everything I knew has been turned on top of itself, in which case I would applaud the author for drawing it out and tricking me. I hope that's the case, but I don't think it is. I think this is a classic good versus evil story. And that's okay. I mean, Brandon Sanderson does that, and he does a very good job at it. But, I wanted more out of this. And I think what would have helped a little bit more is all the POVs are from the good guys. And it would be fun to read a little bit of the bad guys at the same time. A lot of my favorite books show that other side of things. It doesn't need to be all the time. I don't need them to be as frequent. It's okay to do a Wheel of Time thing where you kind of cut in and out of them every now and then to show you a little bit of their side, not to make you empathize with them more, but to make you understand them more and get their motivations and who they are as people. That would make it more compelling. It would make them a more compelling bad guy. One character in particular, the enemy general, I thought would have been a great way to look into this person who's the greatest general it's ever been. And that would have been fun to see it from her perspective, but unfortunately it wasn't there. So let's move on to the writing style. The writing style, unfortunately, was a step down for Brian McClellan from my perspective. The writing was decent. 3 out of 5 is not not good, not bad. It's just like whatever. The prose was a little weaker, I thought, than in previous books. And just some of these things just made me kind of like cringeworthy that I didn't see in the previous books. There's some romance angles in the Powder Mage books, but they're done well. In this book, it felt like a bad YA, the way that this love interest goes. And I'm not ruining anything to tell you this, but like there's this moment in the book where one of the characters misunderstands something that the other character did, and they hate them. And then it gets cleared up and they're back together again very quickly within the same chapter. And it's like, oh man, this is weak. It's not compelling. It doesn't feel like real life. It feels like I'm watching like a soap opera. I don't mind romance in my stories. I like it when it's done well, but it wasn't done well here. And the prose is just whatever. It did kind of feel like Brandon Sanderson to me. I think Brandon Sanderson's prose is the weakest part of what he does as an author. I love him. He's one of my top 5 favorite authors. Stormlight is top tier for me. The prose in Stormlight, whatever. But when the rest of your book doesn't really carry you like his books do, it was noticeably lacking. So overall, my enjoyment and my rating for this book is a 4 out of 5. It's good. I am excited to read the next book. I will buy the book the moment it comes out, and I'll be looking forward to reading it. But I'm ultimately reading it and hoping that the author propels the story to a greater level. I thought that the Powder Mage got better as it went along. I think the way I scored Powder Mage, the first trilogy, was 4 out of 5 for the first, then 5 out of 5 and 5 out of 5 for the next 2 books. So let's hope that trend continues. I'm a big believer that you want the books to improve upon each other. They don't have to always improve every single step of the way, but the last book should be the best book in the series if it wants to go down on that iconic level. I thought that the Powder Mage did that, and it's why the Powder Mage will remain, a top 10, top 15 favorite fantasy series for me. But book series that kind of, fail on the ending and can't stick the landing, that's when you get a major knock on your score. And so let's hope. Brian McClellan has proved himself in the past to me. I'm holding out hope. I do think you should pick up this book. It is a fun read. It's not incredibly long. It's a decent sized fantasy book. You'll get through it relatively quickly, and I think you'll have a good time. So that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it, and happy reading to you.